important concentration of breeding waders, particularly lapwings, snipe, redshanks, and curlews. The lapwings and the curlews are still quite widespread, but the snipe and redshanks are really sort of confined largely to the Otmore Basin and one or two other sites. So strong populations, and about 50 pairs of curlews. As we know, the curlew is one of the top conservation priority birds, well, globally really, but particularly in the UK, we have an internationally important sort of breeding population and wintering areas as well for curlews. And in the Upper Thames as well, we've got some amazing lowland hay meadows. These are internationally important sites, and quite a few of these meadows are also important for breeding curlew. So the two go hand in hand. These are two sort of really treasured bird and a really amazing and treasured habitat. And the area's also been benefited from a big investment of agri-environment funding since 1994, when the Upper Thames tributaries, as it was then, the environmentally sensitive area was established. And I should say also that it's the sort of this huge, important wetland complex in the middle of England that sort of is a linking site between the other big wetlands like the Fens and the Somerset wetlands. These are really big wetland complexes that are so important in maintaining and improving the fortunes of our wetland birds. The Upper Thames Wader Group was established about a year ago. A group of organisations came together, the individuals you've just met, and looked at how we could really start sort of taking forward all the good work that's built up over many years, and lead and coordinate the next phase of wader conservation action across the Upper Thames area. And we need a lot of people to be involved in this, because there's a huge number of people who, obviously yourselves here this evening, but many people beyond this group who have a role to play in conserving and enhancing the prospects of our wading birds. A big group of volunteer field workers, many farmers and land managers, different conservation groups, farmer cluster groups, for example, certainly policymakers and planners, advisors, funding bodies. I'm sure you can think of other examples, but it's a broad group, and we want to be sort of inclusive and engaging with those sort of key audiences to make sure we can do the best possible job for our waders. And the way we've organised ourselves currently is into sort of catchment leads, because we've sort of recognised that different organisations have a focus on different sort of geographical areas. So as you can see here, the RSPB really focused on the Otmore Basin, the Banbury Ornithological Society, the BOS, on the Cherwell, the River Tame Conservation Trust on the Tame, the Wildlife Trust BBOUT on the Upper Ray, particularly where they've got reserves, but also in the Chimney Meadows area, of course, and Natural England with Anne's work, particularly on the Thames. And this slide just shows you geographically how those are spread across the Upper Thames. There's a couple of gaps there you'll probably notice, like the Evenlode and the Ock, where there are some waders. It's just the nature of how we're working at the moment. We've had to sort of choose where we focus. But those of you in other areas, if you've got thoughts on how you might do action, take more action for waders in those areas, we'd be keen to hear from you as well. The role of the catchment leads, and as you can see, the people who are leading, you've met already, David and Nick. Actually, Colin Williams, I think it may well be here. Sorry, Colin, we've not introduced you yet, but Colin coordinates the volunteers carrying out surveys on the Wildlife Trust Reserve. So he's got an important role to play in this, and myself, I cover the Cherwell. There's a lot to do, organising volunteers to carry out our survey work and liaise with farmers. Of course, it's really essential that that's all properly coordinated, and representing the catchment, within our Upper Thames Wader Group discussions, supporting farmer cluster groups, and promoting wader conservation in those particular catchment areas. We're also hoping that we'll have a volunteer to coordinate our data management, so sort of liaison with that person. But it's important to note that catchment lead organisations are responsible for the volunteers in terms of anyone, activities going on under their remit, in terms of volunteer insurance, health and safety, etc. The board itself, the Upper Thames Wader Group board, just a quick outline for you of what we do. Really, it's there to provide leadership and coordination of the group. We're very much taking a partnership approach, as we've explained. We want to be influential. We want to share expertise, and we want to make sure key organisations and stakeholders are engaged and on board and informed. At the moment, we're meeting a couple of times a year. We've actually met more frequently than that recently to try and make some headway, move things forward. And with the board itself, we benefit from input from Kirsty Brandon, who can't be here tonight, with her experience as an advisor and consultant to a lot of farmers and landowners through Oakbank, and through Roselle's role with Wild Oxfordshire in terms of really promoting community action and engagement in nature conservation in Oxfordshire, and Graham's role we've mentioned in terms of Environment Agency as well. So we've harnessed quite a powerful sort of partnership, but that goes beyond those organisations and many other organisations and individuals involved. So it's very, very broad expanse of support. My role as chair has been to sort of establish and lead the board, and to help promote the Upper Thames Wader Group with other organisations. We've got close links with the Curlew Forum, with the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, with BTO, Oxfordshire Ornithological Society, Bucks Bird Club, etc. So that's really important. And we also have a vacancy for a data coordinator role. We need somebody to help us manage the gathering of data and keep that secure and produce the end of season results. So if you're interested in that sort of role, then get in touch with me as well. Which brings us back to curlews. They are very much our current focus for our efforts as a group. We're not ignoring the other waders, but they really are a top priority. Huge decliners, of course, nationally, and in England, a 32% decline between 1995 and 2013. It's not great, and that's been mirrored in the Upper Thames, where we've recorded a similar decline in recent years. That'll be probably familiar to a lot of you. We know that they're under a lot of pressure, curlews, and we give a quick update on the overall findings for the 2020 season in the Upper Thames. David's described his findings already, and also Rachel's given us a good health check in terms of actually how we might use this data. But I know several of you in the audience here did manage to do a good amount of monitoring, given the constraints earlier in the breeding season. So felt it was important to reflect that. We've got David's team's fledged young at Otmore, and also we had some fledged curlew chicks observed by the Chimney Meadows team. So fledged young at both. Those are the Wildlife Trust sites as well as the RSPB sites. The other catchment areas, we've got a less accurate picture, I think, fair to say. Coverage was quite limited, and certainly a lot of Rachel's experience of birds moving around and all sorts of odd behavior certainly relate very, very well to, I can very much relate to from my experience monitoring birds in the Charwell, where birds are using airfields as well as the floodplain grasslands. So it's relating, Rachel, your experience to some of our observations, of birds' behavior and movements is really, really interesting. But we had, so for the sites we were able to cover, we had at least 27 pairs, probably a few more than that. And we also tracked down some curlews in some other sites, where about 5 pairs at these other sites. But please don't quote those figures. They're very much sort of from partial surveys, but I thought you'd be interested to see those. Just covering our future plans in terms of our curlew work. Following on from the success that David and team have had on Otmore last year, we'd like to continue focusing on finding and protecting curlew nests, as it is an effective way of increasing breeding productivity. And as a group, we need to develop our skills and experience to do this, so that we can apply this at more of our breeding areas across the different catchments. Lots been mentioned already about the agri-environment schemes and the importance of really tailoring those to help curlew breeding success. We need to keep doing that. So that's definitely in our future plans, and particularly with Anne involved and others here this evening from Natural England. we know we can count on you helping sort of lead the way, if you like, on making sure that happens. And also, we're very much developing nature recovery networks across England, and certainly in Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire, Gloucestershire. And it's important that we identify these recovery networks for waders as well, and curlews being the sort of being the most widespread, if you like, in these habitats, are going to be really important for establishing that. There's quite a lot of pressures on at the moment with development and pressures for tree planting and so on. So we really, the time is now really to make some headway on establishing a bigger network for these wading birds. Specifically for this year, we're very appreciative. We've got some funding from Natural England just at the moment to help us develop these plans, and also some specific funding for nest protection kits to augment those that Dave has got already and start getting some nest protection done at some of the other sites. And there's also some provision for volunteer training as support. So watch out for some opportunities. Again, we're constrained at the moment, so there may be online training opportunities just at the moment. And Anne Cotton has been working, leading a bid to Natural England Species Recovery Fund to support this work over the next 3 years. And we should hear whether that's been successful or in the next sort of month or so. So there's reasons to be optimistic that we can sort of bring some more resources to this, but it's very much dependent on our volunteer teams and our farmers and land managers all working together on this. We know there's going to be a repeat of the widespread, BTO RSPB breeding waders of lowland grasslands survey. It's planned to go ahead this season, and of course everything is subject to the lifting of the coronavirus restrictions to sort of sufficiently to do that. So it's something we've all got to be, as you know, sort of just mindful of that and responsive as things start changing through to the spring. But it's been a sort of big team effort to get us to where we are at the moment. So thanks and well done to everybody involved in that. And the final thing really from me on this point is just to reiterate that we do need everybody's help and support in your different roles and sort of capacity, capability, the survey monitoring, the nest finding, the nest protection, the farmer engagement, whatever it is you can contribute, do come forward and offer. You know who the catchment lead is for your particular area. And if you'd like to be more involved in running the Upper Thames Wader Group, then do get in touch as well. So that brings us really to a sort of thank you and an opportunity to have any questions. We've got about 10 minutes before the meeting formally ends. Just to mention, all of those of you that obviously been in contact through email and have joined the meeting this evening, I want to send you a questionnaire out in the next few days just to capture your feedback and how you might be able to sort of support the Upper Thames Wader Group going forward. So look out for that. Thank you to our speakers, to David and Rachel, and our board members, but thank you all for coming along this evening and participating.